Okay, good afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. I'm Tanya Milano Snell, parent coach and yoga instructor. I'm here today to talk about grief. And first of all, I just want to kind of dispel a few myths about grief by defining what grief actually means. So if you're watching the live and you want to jump in here at any point, just come on in with the Zoom link in the events section. Grief is really the emotion people feel when they experience a loss. So notice I said it's emotion. I didn't label any sort of emotion. So it's emotion that people feel when they experience a loss. And I didn't say a loss of anything specific. So grief can be a loss of a person. And that's normally how we look at grief. Oh, let me pull this up in case people are commenting too. I want to be able to see your comments if you're here. Okay. So a couple of things that could be considered loss. Of course, if you lose a loved one. It could be a loss of a relationship, like a divorce or a breakup, or maybe you're not speaking to somebody like a sister, brother, aunt, uncle, mother, father. That could be considered a loss. There's a grieving process that goes on. There's emotions that are felt. A couple of more things on the list. Let's see. Moving. When you move, you are losing things that you've loved. You may have a community that you built. You may have schools that you love. You may have a job that you are leaving behind. Friendships. I've been watching the show Working Moms on, I think it's on Netflix. And one of the moms has to move across Canada. And so she's leaving behind her circle of friends. That can be a huge grieving process. Another thing would be a body change. So maybe weight, illness, cancer is a big one that shifts your body, surgeries. When Tanner had diagnosed with Crohn's disease, there was a huge grieving process that we went through on what life was before and now what life needs to be. So there's a lot of emotion that comes on with losing what once was. So I wanted to read this quote I got from Brene Brown that I was listening to a podcast recently where she said, change is a series of small deaths. If we can recognize that change is a series of small deaths and that a grieving process is going to happen with each change, it can really set us up to work with not only ourselves, but with our loved ones, our kids, our family members, that if there's a major change, we can come into the holidays recognizing that there could be some emotions going on that we don't even know about. She also said there will be some loss. We have to deal with grief at some point, but you could choose your death and be guided by the possibility of rebirth. So when there's a change, like you can choose a change, right? You can choose that you're going to leave your job, or you can choose that you need to stop talking to a family member and change the relationship. You can make that choice, but you have to be guided by a possibility that there's a rebirth. There's a new you that's coming. And you do have to feel the emotions of what you need to let go of. So I wanted to go into some tips. Oh, before I go into that, let's just recognize this holiday season that almost everybody has experienced a grieving process because of this global pandemic. We are all dealing with it very differently, but there is a grieving process. There are still changes people are trying to deal with, either leaving their jobs, losing their jobs, making schooling choices for their kids based on their values. There is a lot of grief that has happened throughout the pandemic because people are making choices to change things. Or sometimes we're not making the choices, they're being made for us, and we have to go through the grieving process with those. So I just wanted to say that. And yeah, one more thing before I go into tips on what you can do to deal with, to accept, work on acceptance in yourself and work on meeting your family members where they're at, is that grief and depression can look very similar. And oftentimes we judge this in ourselves and we judge it in other people, that we've got this negative association with depression, that depression may lead to suicidal ideation, prolonged difficulties with life functioning, preoccupation with worthlessness, and lots of guilt and shame. That if it's depression, will not be related to the grief at all. It will just be unrelated. So that category that I just listed is really what someone falling into depression looks like. But grief can look really similar. And it doesn't have to be depression. It can be a season of grief. So it might look like irritability, really deep sadness, difficulty practicing acceptance, seeing or hearing things related to the loss. Wherever they go, they are being reminded of it. So I just want to let you know, for yourself and for your loved ones, that grief and depression can look similar. And when we can accept that, wow, we need to sit with some sadness for a while, or wow, I'm just really irritable, without judging it, then we can process those emotions. Some of the things that overlap with grief and depression might be intense malice, like fatigue, disinterest, apathy, sleeping disruption, loss of appetite, weight loss. So just keeping those in mind, that there may be a family member that seems really down. It doesn't mean that it's depression, right? It could just be for a season that they're going through and processing. Okay. So there needs to be a level of acceptance of the human experience. And this is where my coaching comes into play. Each person, kid, adult, man, woman, whatever, will have an individual experience. They're going to have their own timing and their own emotions. Now, it took me a long time to figure this out. So now with that understanding, like, because I'm a helper, I want to be able to help people feel better. And I know what to do for myself, but I don't know what to do for another person. A coach or a therapist or grief counselor, personal trainer, all that kind of those supports, they can support you with what works for them, but you have to ultimately figure out what works for you. So whenever you're talking with a family member or a child, you can show what works for you. You can give your own personal stories, experiences, but when you go under the other part of that, of like, I want to change, I want to help, I want to take care of them, that's where we start to get into these really hard struggles, and sometimes reactivity from family members, feeling like either we're not heard or understood or seen, or they're not feeling heard, seen, or understood. So here are my tips on how to support yourself and support your loved ones over the holidays. First, know that anger is actually the very tip of the emotions. So there's an image of an iceberg that a lot of people use, and an iceberg floats in the water. 25% of it's above the water, 75% is underwater. So anger is the tip of that iceberg. Anger protects us from all of the vulnerable feelings that are under the surface. So when you see a family member responding with anger, it's because they're protecting something that's really vulnerable. So when you can meet that energy and understand that, it can really get you far in this holiday season. Number 2, be a listening ear to all that arises in yourself and also in loved ones. So what does active listening actually mean? Active listening means we are listening to hear, not listening to speak. Okay? So a lot of times when people are grieving, they just want to talk. They don't want any advice. They don't want you to try to make them feel better. They just want somebody to listen. And so some of the things you can say without giving advice, not trying to, make them feel better or fix it. You could say, like, I hear you're saying da 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 da. Just repeat what you heard. I notice you are, you can notice something about them. Like, I noticed when you said that, you started to look down at the ground. Can you tell me more about that? These are some phrases you can use with your kids too. Can you tell me more about how that feels? Can you tell me more about your family member? Can you tell me more about how it felt to move right before Christmas? That kind of stuff, the curiosity questions. And another thing is, oftentimes we start to attune, right? That's when we want to fix or help people. We start to attune with them. So you might have a feeling that's arising, and all you could do is check in with them and say, is it true that this is making you feel sad? So you're not actually telling them how they feel, but you can still ask and really check in with them. So that's number 2, work on active listening. And this goes for yourself too. When you start to get emotionally upset, this is where Pure Joy Safe Seat practice comes in play. This has changed my life. Can you sit with yourself and ask yourself these questions? An example would be, my sister came to visit for Thanksgiving, and we're working on our relationship hardcore. We're working through this kind of stuff where we've had this dynamic where we try to give each other advice all the time, and neither one of us wants it. We want to figure it out ourselves. So the way I would sit with my own inquiry with her is, when I'm getting upset, to really take a break, go into these questions with myself. Oh my gosh, I noticed when she said that, I started to tighten, and I started to tell myself that what I want is not important. That is an old story that I have from childhood. Or when she, when my sister, said that or texted me that, I can go in and ask these questions. I hear her saying X, Y, and Z, and that makes me feel like I am a really ungrateful sister. And so these are like old stories that I've grown up with, like that you really have to start to love and accept. Doesn't mean you're gonna like call yourself ungrateful or call yourself what is the other one, like nobody ever understands me. It's not a pity party, right? But we have to acknowledge those deep feelings to be able to love on it. So that brings me to number 3. You have coping strategies that you've developed since childhood. So can you accept that there's a reason that you've developed these coping strategies? And there's a reason other people have developed their own coping strategies. So when we can understand that, we can go a long way with working through these emotions. So let's see that okay, and then only when I'm ready can I make a change. Like the other person cannot change unless they're ready. I've had to learn this the hard way through my mom, my dad, my sisters, my spouse, like my kids. You want so much to share your own personal growth and experience, but not until the other person is ready are they going to be able to do it. So one of my coping strategies, and it's important to recognize that there are unhealthy coping strategies. And this is why I've developed this strategy I want to fix and help people, is that I grew up with parents that did not have healthy coping strategies. My dad would drink when he was upset. My mom would eat when she was upset. I'm an emotional eater. So now that I know that about myself, I can recognize when it's happening. I can love that I have this. It's been a protection. It's been a comfort. Food has been comfort. Can I accept that in myself? Right? And understand that there was a reason that this developed in my life. But I'm ready for a change. And only when I'm ready for a change can I start making steps forward. So over the holidays, when you see family members with their unhealthy coping strategies and you want to go in and talk about and try to fix, see if you can use these listening questions, these active listening questions, rather than trying to give advice. Now, I want to talk about, let me know if this resonates in the comments too, and what comes up for you. Really talking about your vulnerable parts will start to shift. When you can look at them and shine a light on them, that's when we can make changes, big changes. And so I want to talk about what coaching opportunities I have if you want to work with me on some of these really vulnerable places. Because my coaching, and you can also go, you could go reach out for therapy, grief counseling, any of that stuff too. But what a coach does, and my coaching specifically, is I look at you like a whole person. You are whole in your being. You have the answers to what needs to happen. You can update those old strategies that you have. So all I do is listen. And also, when you're ready, I have action steps. So I wanted to tell you about parent coaching because I know that many of you are here because you don't want your kids to develop unhealthy coping strategies. I get it, because that's where I'm at. The Pure Joy, what I do one-on-one, the 8-week sessions is really the best way to work through one of your emotional triggers. So what we do is we look at your trigger that your kid is bringing to you, and we discuss what's coming up in you and how you can meet the behavior after you've met your own feelings on the situation. Then how can you meet your child? So it's an 8-week course. It's called Parenting Paused. Leslie Potter developed it. I can do it one-on-one with people, but I'm also offering 5 people in the summit. If you want to jump into my next group, it starts in February. I'm offering that as free to join Om in the Home Revolution. So anybody joining Om in the Home Revolution this week, can also message me and say, I really want to do Parenting Paused 8-week course. And I'll put the description, the link of the course in this video. I will be running groups several times a year. But like I said, if you want to be one-on-one with me, I can start, we can have a conversation, just message me and we can come up with 8 weeks that work for you. And group isn't for everybody, right? This is some vulnerable stuff that might come out in you. So if you're not comfortable talking about this stuff in a group, that's where one-on-one can really help shift something for you. So Parenting Paused, briefly, we go through your goals as a parent, what a major trigger is. We pick one. I know there can be many, many. Then we sit with the sensations that come up in your body, because there are 4 parts of your trigger. You will feel body sensations. We often ignore them, like tightening chest or tight jaw or heat rising, when we start to get reactive with our child. Then we go into the stories that you're telling yourself underneath there. What is the story that's coming up, or the belief about your parenting? And then oftentimes there's a feeling, right? Because anger, like I said, that iceberg, anger is going to come first. But often there's a vulnerable feeling under there that we're just not tapping into. And lastly, that feeling is what's going to drive your behavior. Either you're going to try to control your child, or you're going to try to appease your child, or something you're going to do to not meet that vulnerable feeling. So we go through all of this 4 or 5 weeks, and then we get into setting boundaries, healthy boundaries. What are some kindness practices you can do with yourself to keep this going? And so it's a really powerful, powerful course. And if you just want a one-on-one with me during this summit, I'm giving those out for $47. The link is in the guide section. I can talk to you specifically about this. We can really just work on your overwhelm right now for the holidays. And you can ask me more questions about going further with this work. So I hope I see some of you in my Parenting Pause group that starts in February. And if you're jumping into Om in the Home Revolution, it's $333 this week only. That is 10% off. No, that's only 10% of the full cost. It's worth $3,000. This is a lifetime access. And I'm in here every week. I'm going to be talking with you every week, coaching you and talking through your parenting struggles. We also have all the guest coaches that are coming in too. So it's a huge community that you can be a part of, and I would love to have you. So the way that you, and one person's going to win this week membership. So I'm only putting people into the drawing that actually reach out to me and show me interest in either a one-on-one with me or ask me about the Parenting Paused course. You need to reach out to me and tell me you're interested in being in this community. And then I'll put you in the drawing. So even if you can't join Parenting Paused or do a one-on-one with me, at least message me that you want to be in the drawing for Om in the Home Revolution. And I'll make a post about that too, because I'm not going to pick a winner of somebody that doesn't really truly want to be in this community, because it takes this village of all us be together. I want you to feel like this is your people. These are your people. Okay, so that's all I want to say for today. And like I said, write your questions in the comments for me, tag me, I'll get back to you, or just in the description of or in the comments of the video, tell me that you want to be entered into the drawing. Okay, that means you've been listening and you want me to enter you into the free membership. All right, have a great day, everybody. Bye.